There are days when everything seems to work against you. Your job falls apart, loved ones hurt you, and the dream you've held onto for so long gets crushed by reality. And in that chaos, we often rush to find a villain, the circumstances, society, or someone who just doesn't understand us. But have you ever asked yourself, is the biggest enemy really out there, or is it quietly living inside you? Stoicism isn't just the life philosophy of hardened warriors. It's also a mirror reflecting the depth of our inner world. To the Stoics, the real enemy isn't adversity, it's how we respond to it. It's the flawed judgments, the uncontrolled anger, the vague fears, or the endless desires that lead us astray. It's easy to blame the world, other people, or bad luck. Because turning inward, looking straight at the chaos, the weakness, the untrained parts of ourselves, is much harder. But that's exactly where all change begins. In this video, we'll explore 8 types of inner enemies, the shadows that the Stoics identified, and how they overcame them using reason, discipline, and calm. From there, you won't just understand this philosophy better, you'll understand yourself better too. Type number 1, wrong judgment. Do you remember the last time someone criticized you? Maybe it was your boss, a friend, or even a family member. They said one sentence, maybe not very gently, but probably without bad intentions. Yet you instantly jump to a conclusion. I've failed, they don't trust me anymore, or worse, I'm worthless. That sting of hurt rushed in, followed by pride, then anger, then a sense of collapse. That's when the first enemy shows up, faulty judgment. But let Epictetus bring you back to your senses. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The truth is, most of our pain doesn't come from the situation itself, but from the meaning we attach to it. A piece of feedback becomes an insult. Someone's silence becomes rejection. A small failure becomes proof that we're useless. That kind of thinking isn't wrong because the event is serious. It's wrong because we weren't clear-headed enough to separate fact from feeling. When someone with a Stoic mindset is criticized by their boss for a proposal that didn't meet expectations, they don't let emotion take over. They pause. They don't jump to conclusions. They ask themselves, was that comment really an insult? Or was it just one perspective, feedback that could help me improve? Just asking that question calms the mind. You regain control. Instead of spiraling into negativity, you shift into solution mode. Revisit the content, clarify the requirements with your boss, and learn how to present more effectively. That's the difference between someone ruled by their judgments and someone who rules over their own mind. A Stoic knows that events are neutral, not good, not bad, until we assign meaning to them. And that's not easy to do. The human mind is naturally pulled by the first wave of emotion, which is exactly why learning to separate events from feelings, observation from reaction, is the foundational practice in living consciously as a Stoic. So next time someone irritates you, don't react immediately. Step back, breathe, observe. Ask yourself, am I seeing this clearly, or is this just my ego feeling wounded? Wrong judgment might seem small, but if you don't take control of it, your whole life will be shaped by illusions. On the other hand, if you train yourself to judge rightly, you'll make a huge leap forward on the path to self-mastery. If wrong judgment is the first enemy, then the second is more dangerous because it doesn't shout. It quietly takes over from within. It's desire. Not just any desire, but the kind that goes beyond limits the kind that turns goals into chains and turns longing into obsession. And when you don't control it, you're no longer living, you're being led. We'll continue exploring that next. Type number 2, excessive desire. Have you ever felt like you finally got what you wanted, only for the excitement to fade after a few days? A new phone, an expensive designer outfit, or a fully furnished apartment, they all satisfy you in the moment. But then, out of nowhere, a new emptiness creeps in. You start wanting more, you keep searching. And just like that, you're caught in a never-ending loop of desire. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That wasn't the advice of a hermit retreating from the world. It was the sharp observation of a man who lived at the heart of power, luxury, and temptation in the Roman Empire. He understood this well. It's not lack that traps us, it's our own craving. The modern world is smart. It convinces you that you're not enough. Not beautiful enough, not successful enough, not rich enough. It feeds you images of an ideal life, where everyone is smiling, wearing expensive things, and admired by others. And to keep up, you start chasing. You buy the new car not because you really need it, but because your friends are driving better ones. You upgrade your phone, swap watches, keep spending. But deep down, you still feel empty, because you're not buying to meet a need. You're buying to fill the feeling of being less than, a feeling triggered by others. The problem is, when your self-worth depends on something external, a possession, a status, an image, you give away your emotional control along with it. And with that, you lose your freedom. Your joy becomes tied to having, and your anxiety revolves around losing. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to give everything up and live like a monk. It's not anti-material. It simply teaches that you should control your desires, not let them control you. One of its most powerful practices is premeditatio malorum, imagining what could go wrong before it does. Applied to desire, this means, imagine losing that thing you crave tomorrow. How would you handle it? When you're willing to face the possibility of loss, you begin to see you can live without it. You don't need it to be yourself. And that's when the grip starts to loosen. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a luxury store display. The lights reflect off an expensive watch, making it look like a piece of art. You gaze at it, wanting to own it. A thought echoes in your mind. I have to get it. It looks classy and successful. You picture the admiring glances from others when they see it on your wrist. But pause for a few seconds. Really imagine this. You buy the watch, enjoy it for a few weeks, and then one day you lose it or accidentally damage it. How would you feel? You might feel regret, even anger or unease. And in that moment, you'll realize the pleasure it brought was too short-lived for what it cost you. The hours spent working, the money that could have been invested in your future, and the peace of mind you traded away just to own something that gave you a fleeting sense of pride. So ask yourself, was it really worth it? We often confuse freedom with the ability to own things. But the Stoics remind us, real freedom is the ability to let go. When you're no longer driven by desire, you live lighter. You become more clear-headed. You can enjoy what you have without being weighed down by the fear of losing it or the pressure to outdo others. Desire isn't the enemy, not if you understand it. But unchecked desire, desire that takes the wheel, that is your inner enemy. And like all enemies in Stoic thinking, it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from how you think. So, when you truly understand desire, you open a new door, the door to inner freedom. And sometimes that's the very thing we're really looking for, not the next item in the cart. Type number 3, fear. There's a very familiar enemy, but it creeps in quietly. It doesn't shout, it doesn't punch you in the face, but it holds you back every time you try to move forward. That enemy is fear. In Meditations, philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Short, sharp, and chillingly accurate. What makes us hesitate isn't the situation itself, but the terrifying image we create in our minds. It's not failure, but the fear of failing. Not loss, but the fear of having to endure loss. Fear tends to arrive earlier than reality, looms larger than the truth, and hurts more than any fall we've ever had. Have you ever turned down an opportunity just because a voice in your head whispered, "What if I'm not good enough?" Maybe you were invited to speak at a meeting, but instead of saying, "I'm ready," you replied, "Let someone else do it. I'm not used to that." Not because you had nothing to say, but because you were afraid of being looked at, afraid of being judged, afraid of a moment where you might look unworthy. Fear had already won before the battle even began. In Stoicism, fear is seen as an emotional illusion. Fear isn't a sign that you're weak, it's your mind sending a warning. "I've never done this before, and I'm nervous." That's why Stoics never teach us to erase fear. They teach us to face it, one step at a time. Imagine you're afraid of public speaking. Just thinking about standing on stage makes your heart race, your hands go cold, and your voice falter before you even say a word. A Stoic wouldn't push you to speak in front of hundreds right away. Instead, they'd suggest starting small. For example, speak up with an idea during a team meeting. Another time, tell a short story during a casual hangout with close friends. After each experience, take a moment to reflect. It wasn't as scary as I imagined. I wasn't perfect, but I did it. You're not trying to erase the fear. You're training yourself to live with it. Every small step is a win. Each time you face it, your courage grows stronger. Bit by bit, the fear shrinks, and you grow. This is how Stoicism helps you build strength from the inside out, not through grand gestures, but through steady, intentional action. Stoicism believes you can't control the outcome, but you can control how you respond. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act even when fear is present. Remember, risk might happen or it might not. But if you let fear take the wheel, you've already lost before you've even started. Then, opportunity slips away. The things you truly want, career, love, and freedom, drift out of reach, all because you let a shadow define your reality. So what are you afraid of? Have you ever held back because of fear and still feel that sting of regret? Share in the comments. What fear is your inner enemy right now? Who knows? Maybe a single sentence of honesty is your first step in beating it. And don't forget, fear only has power when you're too afraid to name it. Type number 4, anger. Anger is a fast-burning, intense emotion that silently destroys. It makes your blood boil, your hands tremble, and your mind cloud over in an instant. But the most dangerous part is this. While you think you're unleashing your anger on someone else, you're actually stabbing yourself. The philosopher Seneca once wrote, Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. He wasn't exaggerating. When you're angry, you're no longer yourself. You lose your judgment, act without control, and worst of all, you feel completely justified until the consequences hit. Imagine a familiar situation. You've just completed an important project. Weeks of hard work, care in every detail. But in the meeting, your colleague takes over the presentation and gets all the praise from your boss. You feel angry, betrayed. In the heat of the moment, you stand up and publicly call them out. The room falls silent. The atmosphere turns cold. Your colleague looks confused. You feel a sense of release, but then something feels off. Days later, the moment still lingers. Even though your boss knows you contributed, the way you lost control left a bad impression. Your teammates start seeing you as hard to work with, and you, the one who worked the hardest, ended up sabotaging yourself with one impulsive move. Anger won the battle, but you lost. Stoic philosophy looks this emotion straight in the eye and calls it what it is, a form of weakness disguised as strength. It comes from a lack of inner control, from a bruised ego, from expecting others to act according to our standards. The key isn't to never feel anger, but to never let anger dictate our actions. And that's where Stoicism proves its real power. The Stoics didn't suppress anger by bottling it up. They diffused it by understanding it. When you feel yourself about to explode, pause. Take a breath. Step back physically and mentally. Tell yourself, he's just human, and humans mess up, just like I do. Those few seconds give you a buffer, a space where reason can step in before emotion takes over. Stoicism doesn't preach forgiveness as a lofty ideal. It teaches you to see life as it is. No one is perfect, and the world doesn't revolve around you. So when someone acts wrongly, see it as part of life, not a personal attack. Don't use someone else's mistake as an excuse to destroy yourself. Because in the end, as Seneca warned, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. So next time anger rises in you, remember, you have a choice. You can choose to speak or to stay silent. You can choose to react or choose freedom. True freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like. It's refusing to let your emotions control you. And mastering your anger, that's the first step toward mastering your entire life. Type number 5, pride and arrogance. There's a familiar enemy we often fail to recognize: pride. Not the healthy kind that comes from living with integrity, but the quiet arrogance that convinces us we're always right, that others should listen, agree, and follow our lead. And in that trance of self-importance, we disconnect from the world. We lose meaningful relationships without even realizing the fault lies within. Have you ever been in an argument where, instead of truly listening, all you wanted was to prove yourself right? Sometimes it's not because you dislike the other person. It's simply that your ego grew too loud and drowned out your clarity. You think you're standing up for what's right, but in truth, you're just forcing someone else to yield. In the end, what's left isn't victory, it's isolation. You're right, but you lose a friend. You're right, but the partner no longer wants to collaborate. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor known as the Philosopher King, once reminded himself daily, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come." A short sentence, yet it strips pride bare. When we begin to think we're above others, we stop learning. When we think we're higher, we stop bowing our heads. And when we can no longer bow, we lose humility, the very foundation of any real growth. To the Stoics, arrogance is a kind of inner blindness. It keeps us from seeing ourselves, only the inflated image shaped by ego. The way to see more clearly? Stoics practiced something profound called the view from above. Imagine leaving your body, rising above the city, then the country, then the planet, and realizing you are just a tiny dot in a vast universe, no more important, no greater than anyone else. And just like standing before God, if you believe, you see it plainly. We are all equal in the fragility and limits of human life. No one is above anyone. Arrogance is the one thing that tricks us into thinking we're entitled, while the truth is, every final judgment lies in a power beyond human understanding. When you practice the view from above, you're not diminishing yourself. You're simply placing yourself in the right context. That's where humility can finally grow. You begin to listen more. You argue to understand, not to win. You build instead of destroying. So next time you feel the need to assert yourself, pause. Ask, am I defending the truth or defending my ego? The answer may be hard to accept, but it's exactly what brings you closer to inner freedom. What about you? In life, has pride ever fractured a relationship, an opportunity, or your own inner peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't be afraid to be honest, because as Seneca once said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to grow in humility, day by day. Type number 6. Worry about the future. The night before your important interview, you toss and turn in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. In your mind, worst-case scenarios flood in. What if I stutter? What if they ask something I didn't prepare for? What if I'm judged less competent than others? You haven't said a word, haven't met anyone, haven't even entered the room yet in your mind. You've already failed 100 times. This is the overwhelming yet harmful power of anxiety about the future. It doesn't happen out there, it happens inside your head. In Stoic philosophy, anxiety isn't denied, it's decoded. The Stoics didn't fight anxiety by running from it, but by understanding its nature. Worry often doesn't come from reality, but from the possibility of something that hasn't happened yet. That's why the first thing they teach is to return to the present, because the present is the only thing you truly control. But that's not easy. Modern life, with its flood of information, expectations and pressure, makes it almost impossible to live in the now. We live less to experience and more to anticipate, not to be present, but to prepare for what might go wrong. And here lies the paradox. The more we worry, the more anxious we become, the more overwhelmed we are, the less capable we are of handling what's right in front of us. Stoicism offers a different path. Act instead of imagine. The night before your interview, instead of lying there letting your mind torture you, you can get up, organize your documents, review your responses, take deep breaths, and accept that you've done your best. That's calmness, not because you're sure you'll succeed, but because you know you've done your part. The rest, you let go. You stop trying to control the outcome and start focusing on your actions. This is Stoic mindfulness, not flashy, not requiring deep meditation or bells. Just pure presence. I'm here, doing what I can. That's enough. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." And if you're still worried, Stoicism has another exercise, premeditatio malorum, envisioning the worst that could happen. Not to scare yourself, but to see that even if it does happen, you can still get back up, adapt, and carry on. This is how anxiety gets detoxed. You no longer fear the unknown. You've looked it in the eye and know you can endure it. So next time your mind starts racing toward a future that hasn't arrived, ask yourself, what can I do right now? If you can prepare, prepare. If you can't, let go. Because worry won't change the future. It only robs you of the present. And that very worry, that blurry fear of things that haven't happened yet, is the inner enemy Stoicism wants you to recognize and rise above. Type number 7. Regret about the past. Have you ever lain awake at night, spinning in circles with all the what ifs? What if I had been braver? What if I hadn't said those words? What if I had chosen a different path? Regret, a feeling that seems harmless, can weigh like chains, locking you to a past you can never change. The philosopher Seneca once said, "Life will follow the path it began to take, and will neither reverse nor check its course." Short, blunt, and painfully true. Because the more you regret, the more you torment yourself, the more time you waste the one thing that actually belongs to you, right now. Regret doesn't help you fix the past. It only leaves you paralyzed, afraid to move forward, afraid to start over, and worse, filled with self-loathing. Nick was one of those people. He once had a chance at love, something genuine, simple, yet full of potential. But back then, out of fear of getting hurt, out of insecurity, he said no. Years later, when that person had moved on and found happiness elsewhere, Nick finally realized what he had lost. From that moment on, regret became a tattoo etched on his heart. Not a day went by without him thinking, what if? No relationship since ever truly reached him, because deep down, a voice kept reminding him, you let go of the one person who could have made you happy. But what Nick, and so many of us, fail to see is this. Regret is just another form of obsession. It tricks you into revisiting the past as if you could rewrite it. But you can't. Stoicism doesn't deny sadness, but it does not allow you to live inside it. Stoicism teaches us to face our mistakes, learn from them, and then leave them behind. Instead of asking, why did I do that back then? The Stoic asks, what can I do now to make sure I never repeat that? If Nick lived by Stoic principles, he wouldn't drown in guilt. He would write down the lesson that fear should never lead to your most important decisions. He would list concrete actions. Open up, speak truthfully, learn to face pain instead of running from it. And most importantly, he would understand the present is all he truly owns. No one can change the past, but everyone can change how they live from this moment on. And so can you. If you're carrying a scar from what's already happened, pause. Take a breath. Write down what you've learned. Then look around. The present is calling you to act, to live differently, to love more boldly, to be braver. Don't let one wrong moment steal your whole future. Regret is not a sentence, it's a reminder. Regret is a silent enemy because it doesn't scream, doesn't rage, doesn't make a scene. It just whispers night after night, you could have been happy. But that's a lie, because you still have a chance right now. So, now that you've recognized regret, what else might be silently ruling you? In the next part, we'll uncover the eighth inner enemy, one of the most dangerous, because it wears the mask of a natural reaction: lack of self-control. The thing that makes you say what you shouldn't, do things you'll regret, and lose yourself in a single impulsive moment. Don't miss it, because it might be the very enemy keeping you from living the life you truly want. Type number 8. Lack of self-control. You've set an early alarm to hit the gym, only to turn it off without thinking and fall back asleep. Later, you wake up feeling guilty, disappointed in yourself, and promise, "I'll do better tomorrow." Then tomorrow plays out exactly the same. This isn't new, and you're not alone. But the real question is, why is something as simple as waking up early such a hard battle? To the Stoics, the issue lies in a lack of self-control, one of the most persistent and dangerous inner enemies. Stoicism sees self-mastery and mental independence as the foundation of a strong life. Losing control over yourself isn't just about skipping the gym or eating erratically. It's about surrendering your ability to lead yourself, letting emotions drive your actions, and allowing bad habits to drown out who you truly want to become. Self-discipline isn't about grand gestures. It's about small choices, repeated every day. When you let yourself off the hook because you're too tired today, you give procrastination one more step. When you keep putting things off, you're not just wasting time, you're slowly eroding your trust in yourself. And over time, you start to believe, "I'm not good enough, I lack discipline, I can't change." That's when your inner enemy has won, not with a big strike, but with quiet, patient nudges. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His point is clear. You don't need to control the world. You just need to control yourself. But to do that, you must begin with the smallest actions, and most importantly, do them consistently. Stoicism doesn't promote extreme hardship, nor does it demand that you become perfect overnight. What the Stoic path encourages is steady inner discipline, a process of rebuilding your self-trust through specific, repeated actions. And to do that, you can start with one simple but powerful method, one positive habit at a time. Try starting like this. If waking up early to hit the gym for a full session feels overwhelming right now, don't force it. Instead, just get up, wash your face, and stand upright for a few minutes. Feel your body waking up. The next day, add 5 minutes of walking around the house, or do some light stretches. The day after that, pick a simple move, maybe a 30-second plank, or some light squats. It doesn't have to be perfect, just consistent. Each small step isn't just an action, it's a message you're sending to yourself. I'm someone who keeps promises to myself. By stacking these small actions into a sequence, you're not just forming a new habit, you're reshaping the image of who you are. Someone who can start, follow through, and change. Every small win is a brick that builds your confidence. No one pulls motivation out of thin air. It comes from daily victories. Keep going like this, and a few weeks from now, you'll be surprised at what you've become. Self-control isn't something you either have or don't have. It's like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. And the more you neglect it, the weaker it becomes. The inner enemy, lack of discipline, doesn't roar or attack. It simply chips away at your belief in yourself. And the more you lose that control, the easier it is to make excuses, and the harder it is to break the cycle. But you can break it, not with a one-day burst of motivation, but with quiet commitment, small, steady steps, day by day. The Stoics never said you have to win every battle, just that today you beat the version of you from yesterday, even if only by a single step. And that is the most sustainable kind of victory. We've just taken a closer look at our true enemies, not other people, but the things unfolding within our own minds, from poor judgment, endless desire, invisible fears, to fleeting bursts of anger. These forces quietly shape our actions, drain our energy, and push us further from inner peace. But as the Stoics once said, we can't control the world, but we can control ourselves. And that starts with training the mind, sharpening our reason, managing our emotions, and staying grounded amid life's chaos. So, what about you? Which inner enemy are you currently battling? Share it in the comments so we can learn from each other and walk this path together. Choose one of the 8 practices that resonate with you most. Apply it in your life, and come back here to share how it goes. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you won't miss the next videos on Stoicism. See you next time, and always stay in control of yourself.